welcome back. It's time to get started on this belt. So there's a couple of things we're going to do with this. We're going to be doing a border edge on it. We're also going to be setting in a stitch line, or a stitch groove where our stitches are going to lay in. We've also got our straps here where we're going to do all the fun stuff of that, lay in the holes here for the tongue and set in our buckle. We're even probably going to be doing some skiving with this one, just to try to thin out this area where the buckle is going to be, so it spins, but it's going to lay a little bit flatter, because right now, as you can see, it's a little thick in that area. All right, so where are we going to begin on this? What's the first thing we want to do? So what I would like to do at this time is find the center areas where my strap and my buckle are going to be. So to do that, we're going to use our wing divider. So the wing divider, it's kind of like a compass, if you will. It's just you're not going to be setting in a pencil or anything like that. It's just these little sharp points and a little winch to open it up. So to find that center point, a couple ways you could do it. Obviously, you could just zoom in here. So one way, of course, you could do it is take your ruler, measure it out, find that center point. Move our hands here. Find that center point, kind of make a mark, and then adjust your wing divider accordingly. What you could also do is, we know that this is 3 inches. Take my wing divider, find that 1.5 inch mark, set it up, and when I do a wing divider, one thing you always want to take into account when you do this is this portion of the leather, the fact that it's got a bit of a height, so you are going to lose a little bit, and you want to compensate for that by making your wing divider just a little bit wider. So when I set this up right, it's just a little bit wider than 1.5 inches. What I've seen a lot of other professionals do is they'll just take the wing divider, lay it, so you're going to lay it to where this flat end here is flat against the leather, and they'll just make a small little mark. Then they'll flip to the other side, line it up, and make another mark. And you're trying to make sure that those lines are exactly the same, that they run across each other. If they're a little bit off, you just make a small adjustment, and then find it again. Once you've found that center, you basically are just going to set your wing divider right on the piece. You're making sure that this point is kind of digging into the leather, and then just pull it back. Now you might not be able to see it on the camera, but there is a slight mark. There we go. You can probably, if I catch the light just right, you can see that mark in there. And I've already done it on this side as well. I found where that center line is going to be. And the reason why I wanted to do that is so when I put on these the buckles and all the straps, I can make sure that they're going to line up right in the center. Beforehand on my template, I found out where these need to start from and go to. So I know this one was 7 and I think 1/8 back from the start of this strap, and I just make sure that that line is pointed there and it goes forward. Okay. As also you can see, I've already set up where my hole punches are going to be for the buckle, and that was just using the template that I'd already designed. So I knew where all that stuff was going to be ahead of time and just went ahead and marked that. So with that, armed with that knowledge, we're going to set up our border edge and find out where that's going to be. So again, I'm going to use my template, and I've just kind of printed out this kind of larger, this to scale version of the area here of the buckle. And basically I'm just going to winch up my wing divider. Wing. Ooh, it's much smaller. Find that distance, and again we're gonna make sure we're just a little bit wider to compensate for what we're gonna lose in that distance. I guess the depth of the leather. And now that we know that, I can just start making my cut. Sorry, this is not a cut. This is just a small groove. It's going to be a small indentation. And I'm just going to do that across the entire piece. The reason why we're doing this is it's going to help us set up where we're going to put in our design. Kind of gives us that border. We're also going to know where to put in our stitches, because we're going to put our stitch groove right in between this edge and where we're putting in this border. So this is a little off camera. I'll pull back a little bit so you can see. And what's great about the wing divider is like this right here. I'm gonna have a perfectly even border all the way across, because it's gonna be following right the same edge that I've cut out ahead of time. So just like that. It's going to follow it, get to this curve, curving around. Really simple, really nice, and consistent border edges, which is what we want. So if you were ever wondering how they did it, how they got such perfect spacing on those borders, it's all thanks to the wing divider. It's one of those tools I put in, I believe, or I talk about in my tools list. I think it's a great addition to everything that you're going to do. I mean, I use it in every project. Flip this around. And what's also nice is we can make sure that all of our pieces, no matter where they're cut out or how many different pieces we have, they're all going to have a consistent border width. Now I am putting a little bit of pressure right on this because I want a good groove. I'm just going to go back over this area here. So I'm putting just a little pressure because I do want that groove there. Reason being is we're going to end up going back over all this with our swivel knife and actually cutting into the leather, because we want to get that separation in there in order to get the swivel knife in there and be able to bevel. Okay, so we've got a nice line there. Let's zoom in on this. I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but we've got a groove set into the piece. Okay, so when that's set in, what do we want to do next? Well, the next thing we're probably going to end up doing is our design. Go ahead and scratching that in. So that's why we set up this groove here, is we want to be able to line up this groove accordingly, or these lines we drew already with the groove. And this is going to make sure everything is consistent. Okay. Looks like we're pretty good. It's a little off, but as long as we are in the ballpark, we should be good. So now, how are we going to get this design onto the leather? Especially, let me pull back, So how are we going to get this design onto the leather? Well, what we're going to do is case the leather with some water, let that soak in, and then it's going to be ready to do some etching into that. And when we do that, we're going to use our stylus for that process. I'll show you here in a second. We're going to case the leather and move on to that portion. So casing the leather is very simple. We're just going to take a bowl of water and a sponge. I'm just going to get this sponge wet. Not sopping wet, just a little wet. You don't want this, big thing of water getting on this whole bit. And I'm just gonna go across the leather and get this thing wet. Now you want the water to the point where it's going to be penetrating down into the leather. You're wanting it to get into the center of the leather. The reason being is that's going to help the impressions to get into the leather and stick. Now, as you can see, I'm doing the entire belt, casing it with this water all the way across. I've seen it where some people will just do just the area that they're going to be tooling, and I've seen where people will do, like I'm doing, the whole piece. So I haven't heard why you would do just the area, but I've only heard why you want to do the whole piece. The reason being you want to do the whole piece, excuse me, just want to get up the water underneath here. I've heard the reason why you want to do the whole piece is so that when you get to the dyeing process, the water is not going to be at different levels later, and that sometimes the water can cause discoloration, and you'll be able to see those areas where you've had water sitting for a while, and other areas where the water wasn't there at all. So at this point, we've cased the leather and kind of letting it get back to its okay. So our leather has just about returned to its original color, and that's what we want. Once we put the water on, kind of let it dry out, come back to that original tone. You can still see the little bit of water still in there, and that's fine. That's kind of what we want. So I'm going to place my pattern right there. And one thing I wanted to say is you do want to be careful. You don't want to make the leather sopping wet. That's not what you're going for, right? Just kind of wetting the top of the surface and letting everything sink in. Okay. That's where I want it. So this is why I use transparent, this tracing paper. This is slightly transparent, so I can see through it, and by being able to see through it, I can place my pattern exactly where I want it. I don't want to use, just kind of standard white paper. You're not going to be able to see through it, so it's going to make things a little bit more difficult for you. Okay, so we're going to take our trusty stylus. In this case, I'm going to use the ballpoint end, and just like we learned in school, tracing. And don't let people make fun of you and call you a tracer. There we go. So right off the side, you can kind of see that line that's been made, and that's what we want. I put down a little bit of tape here so I can lift it up, check on the piece, see how we're progressing, and then put it back down without any fear of losing my spot or getting things off. So let's start with this right here. Start with this centerpiece. Now with an intricate piece like this, it's very easy to get off and forget what all you've done and miss pieces. So my advice at that point is pick a spot and keep working it. Choose very specific areas to work on. Don't jump around. So I'm going to be working on kind of this medallion piece here. And that's all I'm going to do first. Boom. Now, don't be afraid if things get a little wobbly here. That's going to happen. You're not going to be able to do perfectly straight lines. And that's just the nature of leather working and doing this whole kind of process. The grain of the leather has kind of got a mind of its own, and it's going to push your stylus around. All right, there you go. And we've got the medallion set in. So like I was saying, this leather is going to push the stylus around. I've got a little bit off kind of in this section. The reason why I'm saying that's fine is because you're going to end up beveling all this stuff and cutting in with the with the swivel knife, and the swivel knife is going to fix a lot of those weird wobbly problems that you won't even notice once it's all said and done. Now, granted, you want to get as close as you can. You don't want to just be all over the place, but don't beat yourself up if you didn't get these perfect straight lines. It's not going to happen. So don't worry too much. There we have it. Okay, we are set in. We've got our little medallion right there. Again, this is for a personal character of mine, and so if anybody from the game I'm playing is watching this, they're probably going to know exactly what that 3 is for. It's a neat little reference. Okay, So I'm just going to continue to mark this, and we'll come back once it's all done. All right, we'll see you then. And that's it. That is our piece completely kind of etched into the surface of the leather. So this will be kind of our guideline for all of our swivel marks and tooling and all that kind of stuff. We're going to do it. Again, this is going to be a Sheridan style. This will be my first time trying a Sheridan style, so we're going to be kind of learning together on this one. I've done as much research and kind of training as I can, and hopefully what will happen is all that will pay off for you guys as I can kind of share what I know. One thing I do want to point out before we move on to the next bit is this area here was scratching in just nicely, but as I was moving through and getting towards the end, it started being a little bit more resistant. That's because it was drying out more and more and more as I was going through the piece. So it's something to be cognizant of in all of your tooling, all of your marking with cutting with a swivel knife, everything like that. If it starts to become a little hard or it's not working as well, it's probably time to re-wet the leather and kind of let it dry up again and start fresh. It's okay to do that in the middle. You want to try not to do it too much, obviously, just because I as much as you can kind of keep too much moisture out of the leather while you're working, that's probably for the best, but you know, do what you can to get the best product, right? That's it. So the next bit, we'll get our swivel knife out, start cutting. Cool deal.